Hi, I'm Norris, CEO of Techbook Online and star of The Week That Was, heard every Friday during the 6 o'clock hour on 900 AM WURD and 900 AM WURD.com. That's every Friday during the 6 o'clock hour on 900 AM WURD and 900 AM WURD.com. I'm standing here on the site 6221 Osage Avenue, where the house that was actually bombed, and I'm here with Associate Professor of Journalism at Temple University, Mr. Linn Washington. He was one of the journalists who was actually here on the scene that covered it that day. He'll be speaking tomorrow at Philly Camp, along with Mr. Walt Hunter and other journalists who covered it that day. But we're going to speak with him exclusively about some of his memories and what this means to the city 30 years later. Mr. Washington, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.
Just give us an insight on why is this important 30 years later?
Well, it's important 30 years later because it's an injustice, and the injustice was broadcast live on television. We saw the bombing, we saw the burning, and in the aftermath we knew that 11 people were murdered, 5 of whom were children. So as King is often quoted as saying, injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, or something to that effect. And in putting it into this context, an injustice 30 years ago that was never righted, a wrong that was never righted, is still a wrong that needs to be righted. So 30 years later, something needs to be done about the murder of those 5 children and the destruction of the homes of 250 black people.
How does people in my generation make sense of the fact that an injustice like this happened, and many of the actors, the judge who signed the warrant, Lynn Abraham's running for mayor, W. Wilson Good sits on many boards in the city, he's the co-chair of the Mayor's Commission on African American Men, Ed Rendell is endorsing people left and right in the mayoral campaign. How do we make sense of the fact that nobody went to jail except the person who actually survived this tragedy?
Well, it just underscores what the whole synergy is with the Black Lives Matter movement, that this country has historically treated black people and persons of color in a manifestly unfair and unjust way. What you saw happen on May 13th, 1985 is not too dissimilar from what you saw in Ferguson last summer, where a grand jury allowed a police officer who murdered a young kid to get off. We saw that in Staten Island, where a grand jury allowed police officers who were filmed killing a man get off. We saw that in Southern Ohio, where a man in a Walmart was shot, killed because he had a BB gun in his hand. So we see this replicated today, but this is one of those things that did not get addressed then. And let's give me a little history here. In the 1800s, in the 1830s, there was an arson in downtown Philadelphia. There was an anti-slavery building that sat on the same site that where public television station is today. That place was burned to the ground because it was an anti-slavery place. There was a lot of pro-slavery sentiment here in Philadelphia, and the grand jury said, we don't know who did it. It must have been strangers, so we can't arrest anybody, although the official news reports of this incident said the mob that burned the place down was composed of gentlemen of standing and wealth. Well, if they didn't know who those gentlemen were, how did they know they had standing and wealth?
And to your point, we talk about the difference in the way that black and white people were treated. They didn't know who did that burning, but if you look at before the bombing of this home, back when in Powhatan, some people think that what happened here was in retaliation for the cop being shot. And there was no one who could ever prove that people from the Move 9 killed that cop, but they were in jail, right? So, I mean, I guess that goes to your point of the stark difference in where it was treated. Black lives didn't matter on that day, and it didn't matter in 1985, did it?
Well, black lives didn't matter in 1985. Black lives didn't matter in 1978, because you got to understand that what happened on August 8th, 1978 in Powhatan Village, where police officers attacked the house that Move was occupying, that was at a time when police brutality was at epidemic levels in Philadelphia under the reign of Mayor Frank Rizzo. Police brutality was so bad that the U.S. Civil Rights Commission did an investigation in Philadelphia, and it's called Guarding the Guardians. And then a year after that, or the same year, I think it was 1979, the U.S. Justice Department filed a lawsuit against the city of Philadelphia, naming the mayor and 21 other top officials and charging them with actively aiding and abetting police brutality, the first time such a lawsuit had ever been filed in the United States. But what happened with that lawsuit is that a federal judge threw it out on a narrow, perverted technicality, and that has been very historic, where the courts overturn and do not protect the rights of black people, people of color, and people who are poor, including those who happen to be white.
What took place here in 1985 was unprecedented. I mean, there was never a scene like that in a city before, many have said. When we talk about police brutality, we talk about Rodney King, we always talk about Ferguson now. Why do you think that the MOVE incident is always left out of the conversation of police brutality?
That's something that is perplexed me. I was writing some articles this week, and I had an idea. I said, well, let me look up the worst police brutality incident list. And I went online and found 4 or 5 of them. The MOVE incident is not on any one of them. Amadou Diallo is on just about all of them. Shot in a palisade of 41 bullets. Well, Philadelphia police fired 10,000 bullets into the MOVE house in a 90-minute span. Rodney King, that's perceived as the first videotape beating by a police officer or police officers in the United States, 1991 in LA. Well, in 1978, Philadelphia police were filmed beating Delbert, Africa. And when it got to court, a judge let them off. A directed verdict of acquittal, although they admitted that they beat the guy. The directed verdict of acquittal was not even requested by the attorneys. The judge said it would be unfair to let a jury decide this, which short-circuited trial jury. But we saw a few months ago in Chicago where a judge gave a directed verdict of acquittal to a police officer who admitted that he shot and killed a black woman who was running away, and this police officer was off duty.
So you have a lot of insight on this story and a lot more insight on the context of police relations with communities of color nationwide and here in the city. Are police community relations better today under Ramsey than it was under Frank Rizzo?
Yes and no. Just the level and intensity of police brutality under Ramsey is less than what it was under Frank Rizzo, but the reality is that it still persists. And the structural mechanisms that allow this to persist, one of which is the arbitration process, where police officers are allowed to completely go back to work, you know, despite the fact that they've been caught doing things wrong. Ramsey has opposed it, but he really hasn't made a big fight to change it around. Let's understand too that Ramsey is the guy who has been affecting the stop and frisk that jacks up 200,000 people a year, mainly black youth between 18 and 35. And it's salient to note that of those 250,000, 210,000, however many, is still a lot, 95% of them are caught with nothing. No weapons, no drugs. So if Ramsey really wanted to step forward, he would tell his boss, Mayor Nutter, that, hey, this is not good. We need to back away from this. But he dutifully follows orders, just like he did in Washington, D.C., when his police department down there beat people, in the same way that he did in Chicago when his police force there beat people. He's a nice guy, but...
In closing, talking about mayors, Mayor Wilson Goode wrote an op-ed this week that said MOVE shouldn't define the city nor his legacy. How would you respond to that?
He may think that, however, it's different. Despite the fact that so many people in Philadelphia and beyond don't know anything about this incident, it is a stain on the city of Philadelphia. Those who know, and as the history books slowly start being written, this is going to be one of the first that go along with Philadelphia. The first public library, the first public hospital, the first computer, the first city that bombed himself. And Wilson Goode, who is fundamentally a good person. I mean, when he got out of office, he didn't go to some corporate law firm, although he wasn't a lawyer. He started working with people, started working with incarcerated folks. He went on to become a minister, but this was his legacy. He was elected in part as a reaction to police brutality, and the first thing he did was try to make friends with the cops, the very people that 3 or 4 months beforehand would have chopped off one or more of his body parts. But he's going to reach out and make friends with his enemies, like he's like the old Kool-Aid commercial. Let's make friends, you know. And it's the same way with Barack Obama. He squandered the power that he had in his first term trying to make nice with Republicans who wanted to chop off some of his body parts.
That was Mr. Linn Washington. He was a reporter for the Philadelphia Daily News during the MOVE bombing. He will be speaking tomorrow at Philly Cam at 7th and Chestnut, along with other journalists who covered the incident that day. Thank you, Mr. Washington, for your time. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, I'm Flood the Drummer, and I'm drumming for justice.